Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your program Africa Today. We'll be bringing you the latest developments on the ground in the African continent. And as we are celebrating the Easter Sunday today in the African continent, across the continent, Easter celebrations have brought together millions of worshippers in churches and public gatherings, also blending deep religious traditions with local cultural expressions. In countries like Nigeria, Easter has been marked not only by church services but also by vibrant cultural events. In Lagos, thousands join the annual carnival, a colorful celebration held during the Easter that showcases Afro-Brazilian heritage through parades, music and dancing. Also in Mozambique, churches leaders used Easter services to call for peace, particularly in the conflict-affected the areas such as Cabo Delgado, where ongoing violence has displaced hundreds of thousands in the country. Meanwhile, in Ethiopia, home to one of Africa's largest Christian populations, celebrations have been more subdued. Rising fuel and food prices also have made traditional Easter practices, including communal meals and animal slaughter, increasingly difficult for many families. Despite these challenges, Easter remains a powerful moment of spiritual reflection across the African continent, from midnight masses and candlelit vigils to large public holidays declared in countries like Nigeria. The celebration continues to emphasize themes of hope, sacrifice and renewal. Also, Pope Leo XIV is set to begin a major visit to the African continent this week in a tour aimed to promoting peace and security, supporting the poor and strengthening the church presence across the African continent. We have more in the following report. The 10-day tour includes visits to Algeria, Cameroon, Angola and Equatorial Guinea. The visit comes at a time when Africa is becoming increasingly important to the Catholic Church, with more than 20% of the world's Catholics living on the continent. During the trip, the Pope is expected to deliver dozens of speeches and hold meetings with political and religious leaders, focusing on key issues, including the conflict, poverty, migration. In Cameroon, he will attend a peace meeting in conflict-affected regions, while in Algeria he is set to promote Christian-Muslim coexistence, including a visit to one of the country's largest mosques. The tour will also highlight economic inequality and governance challenges, particularly in resource-rich countries where many people still live in poverty. Analysts say the visit is not only spiritual but also political, as the Pope seeks to draw global attention to Africa's challenges while representing the continent as a place of hope, growth and opportunity. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're still watching Africa Today, and as we all know that the Iranian and United States negotiations have failed to reach an agreement to end the war in the Middle East. Vice President J.D. Vance just announced the failure of the negotiations, and of course this failure of the negotiations will have a bad effect and on the African continent. To talk more about the repercussions on the African continent, we are very delighted to have with us over the phone Dr. Mohammed Al-Izabi. He's an international relations expert. Thank you very much, Dr. Izabi, for talking to us today in Africa Today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Izabi, we've all followed the latest developments on the ground concerning the failure of the negotiations between Iran and the United States. Tell us more about your take on this.
Well, it was expected that the negotiations between Iran and the United States will fail, especially that we know that no real ability, no real aim that the United States wants this negotiation to succeed.
Yeah.
United States wants Iran to announce surrender and accept conditions. Sure that Iran will not accept any condition from United States conditions.
Yeah.
So it's expected that the negotiations will fail. Also, I know that from my analysis from the story. Donald Trump didn't want to ceasefire. He just wants sometimes to period again to attack Iran. He wanted to repair the system of air defense. He wanted to send planned carrier George W. Bush to the area. So he wait or need some time just to complete everything to attack again.
Yeah.
So he accept the 2 weeks ceasefire to period again to attack, especially that Donald Trump will not accept anything that Netanyahu didn't want. So everything is expected and it's normal, and I think that the war will begin the last this week, at the last of this week, or the beginning of the next week, not more than that.
Dr. Azabi, what role, if any, can African countries or regional organizations play in pushing for renewed negotiations or de-escalation?
Well, the only African country is playing a great role in this negotiation is Egypt.
Yes.
Especially that President Al Fattah al-Sisi sent many messages to Donald Trump, try to convince him to stop this war, especially that all the countries, not African countries only, but all the countries of the world are affected by this war.
Yes.
We saw that the price of oil barrel is raised from $65 per barrel up to $120.
Yeah.
So it affected all the world countries. Also, we know that some African countries, not rich countries, so the raise of oil for the Africans will affect, on the African countries, especially they may not have enough money to buy the expensive price. So it will affect the energy in the African countries. Also, closed Hormuz Strait make the oil not easy to reach to the African countries. So we will see a crisis in electricity infrastructure in the African countries. So every country in the world wants this war to be ended so soon. To solve the problem of
Yes, Dr. Azabi. Dr. Mohammed Al-Azabi, the international relations expert, thank you very much for joining us today in Africa Today. And moving to some African news, where Sudan is facing one of the most severe hunger crises in the world, with millions at risk of starvation as conflict, displacement and economic collapse push the country towards widespread famine. Let's watch. Sudan is currently experiencing what aid agency describe as the largest hunger crisis globally, driven by nearly 3 years of ongoing conflict. Fighting has devastated agriculture, disrupted supply chains, and forced millions of people from their homes. According to the United Nations and humanitarian organizations, more than 21 million people, nearly half of the population, are facing acute food insecurity, with hundreds of thousands already living in famine-like conditions. Famine has already been confirmed in parts of Darfur and South Kordofan, while more than 20 additional areas remain at risk. The situation is especially critical for children. Around 4 million children and vulnerable women are expected to suffer from acute malnutrition in 2026, with many at risk of death due to lack of food and health care. Humanitarian agencies warn that the crisis is being worsened by limited aid access and funding shortages. In many areas, families have been forced to sell their belongings or even eat seeds meant for planting just to survive. The conflict has also displaced millions of people, making it harder to deliver food and medical assistance. Without an immediate ceasefire and increased international support, experts warn that the hunger crisis could deepen further, pushing more regions into full famine. And moving to Benin, where voters are heading to the polls to elect a new president today, in a race dominated by the ruling coalition candidate and marked by concerns over security and political freedom. Let's watch. Benin is holding its presidential election on April 12th, with nearly 8 million registered voters expected to take part across the country and abroad. The vote comes as President Patrice Talon steps down after completing his constitutionally limited 2 terms in office. His tenure delivered strong economic growth, but has also faced criticism over restrictions on opposition and democratic institutions. The frontrunner in the race is Finance Minister Ramold Wadagani, widely seen as Talon's chosen successor. He is campaigning on continuing economic reforms and improving healthcare and also infrastructure. Wagadani faces a limited challenge from opposition candidate Paul Haukompi after major opposition parties failed to field candidates due to strict electoral requirements. The election takes place against a backdrop of rising security concerns, particularly in the northern regions where attacks linked to Sahel instability have increased. A failed coup attempt in late 2025 has also raised fears about political stability. If no candidate wins more than 50% of the vote, a runoff election is scheduled for May. However, analysts say the outcome is likely to favor the ruling coalition candidate. Well, ladies and gentlemen, by this report, we reach the end of our program today, Africa Today. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for more to come on Nile TV.